Oh, and it popped up on mine saying it's recording. Wait. I had to. I'm sorry. I didn't.
Look, I have my moments. I still do. Don't get me started.
Got you. I got you.
If you all don't know, this is going to be a fantastic, crazy interview. This is Old Soulz, and usually we talk about, how do you know what you know, and all the existential moments that we have. I think I got some on my beard there. All those existential moments that we have. Oh, wait, I got to record on this one too. I'm doing GarageBand and I'm doing Zoom.
Hey.
Case.
Yeah.
But usually we talk about all those existential moments that you have, those exceptional moments, and we really start to explore what the exceptions are in our lives and expand our conscious in the exceptions. But we're going to narrow our focus for today and really think about education and think about what's happening in the academic and political realms here. And anyone better to have this conversation with than Juan. Actually, he was my boss on the radio show. I co-hosted.
Oh my God! No, Roderick, stop! You were my boss first, and then we were co-DJs for the radio station.
Definitely, we were, but you were my boss. You were my boss. So it was great.
Oh, Roderick, you're too sweet.
The boss on the other side. You were my boss on this side. So, but I couldn't think of anyone better. We used to co-host a show. What was the show called?
Let's Talk Trio.
You know what? And because, Juan, you're the guest, I'm going to let you give some background on that show, and then we'll just go from there.
Yeah.
So tell the audience, what was our show about? What was our goals?
Yeah.
Please.
So as you remember,
Should I
go ahead.
Introduce you by name first? Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the great, the one only, Juan Rivas.
Thank you for the wonderful introduction, Roderick. I really appreciate that. You and I go back way, way back, right? 2002 when we first started college. And now here we are, different paths, but still very much the same. Very much, yes, a lot of gusto. I love it. Love it. So the radio program that we created, what's called, initially was, I can't remember the original name, but it was Let's Talk Trio. Mm-hmm. And the purpose of it was to bring attention to trio programs that existed in the regional area. And we did a pretty good job, I feel, that we contacted several New Mexico trio programs. We even outreached to the Council of Opportunity and Education, some representatives there, and even to Texas. So again, the objective was just like, hey, let our audience know about the programs that exist in Portales and in Albuquerque and Socorro.
What is Trio and what do they do and what?
Oh, sure.
Yes.
So recently I was flabbergasted by a representative that did not know what Trio was. Wow. It was on an interview on CNN. It was interesting because they're like, it's Trio. It's an acronym. It stands for something. I just don't know. And so the Trio community was, Trio doesn't stand for anything. It was originally 3 programs, started back in 1965. And these 3 Trio programs were there to address the inequity gap between college-going rates and helping minority students achieve college success. Mm-hmm. And one of the 3 was Trio Upward Bound, and then Student Support Services and Educational Talent Search followed right after.
Awesome. And so this radio show gave a voice to do what? What was the purpose of Let's Talk Trio? What do we do with this?
It's to really give voice to the programs, to allow them to say, yes, here we are. Yes, we exist. Here are the people that are running it. But more than that, here are the students we serve. and to really bring attention to the to not only the community itself, but to see what institutions are doing to address the educational gap by having a TRIO program on their campus. So we're bringing attention to that. We're saying, here's what the TRIO program in Socorro is doing. Here's the TRIO program in Texas. This is what they're doing. The idea is just to bring these voices to life. And what I felt was missing in a lot of like NPR or some of other radio broadcasts was we're not listening to TRIO voices. We're not listening. There's got to be a way to elevate that and put a platform to it. That way the audience can hear that, oh, TRIO programs exist. Yeah, we should care about these TRIO programs because look at the impact that they're making. So that was the whole gist behind Let's Talk TRIO.
Excellent. And Juan, given your experiences and your long line of history in TRIO programs, do you sense that there is equality in education in America, in the great United States?
Ooh. Well, you see, that's a very loaded question, and I will try my best to answer that. Because in my growing as a professional and coming to work for Colorado State University, I've learned that inequality is such a short-term word because it's a Band-Aid, really, of what we need to address. When we're really talking about inequality, we really should be talking about inequity. What is it that the students don't have to help them be successful?
Wow, I love that, Tay-Tay. Juan, I can't be calling you.
No, that's okay. I love the term of endearment, Rodrigo.
Listen. Juan, I mean, we've already had like almost an hour worth of discussion before we even start this recording because Juan and I haven't actually spoke to each other in a few years. And it was refreshing to catch up with each other's lives, and we've kept connected via email. And we'll ask for your forgiveness ahead of time because we're going to have moments, and Juan and I know what these moments are telepathically, and so you may get us laughing very randomly, or it would appear to be random. But Juan and I used to work together we've known each other since 2002. And we've had classes together during our bachelor career. And then we ended up working full time together in one of the programs that he mentioned, Upward Bound. And we were romanticizing about our time together. And, honestly, it's crazy because I was the director for Upward Bound for almost 4 years, and Juan was my coordinator. But really, as I talked to Juan, it wasn't like this hierarchy position. It was we worked together as a team, and though I had to be supervised and those kinds of things at pivotal moments, it really was a great working experience. And I think that I'm learning even more now, as we kind of alluded to, that you don't get that dynamic very often, and to be sincere about that experience. I'm sure there was moments where Juan probably went home after work and pulled a patch of his hair out because this one here to know what to do in certain situations as a director, and not having any experience was like, I just need you to do A, B, and C. And he's like, how we gonna do that, and how this gonna work? And we had to.
Roderick, no, I think the thing was for me. I think, and we talked about this as we were working together. That first semester that we were working together, it was a lot of like, "Are you sure you know what you're doing?
Oh my God!
Do I need to what? What are we doing here? What do you mean you need me to do that? I don't understand what you're saying." It was a lot. It was a lot of that first, and then as we started growing and moving forward with the program, I felt that your intentions for the program were holistically good, and I started adapting to that and started saying, "Oh well, the vision is great. Why am I not adapting to this? Am I preventing the progress of the program? Should I just move out of the way? What should I do?" And it was a lot of that back and forth of this is what Susan used to do. This is what Doris used to do. And Roderick is taking the program in a different direction. And for me, it was that struggle. Yeah. And it wasn't anything personal to you. I think it was more of like, but it was tradition. This is what we would do. Wow. And then I had to learn to say, you know what? He's the director and he has his own vision for the program. And being able to take a step back and say, all right, whatever he needs me to do, I'm going to do that.
Wow. That, let me say, I didn't pay him to say that either. Let me just get that out. No payment on this end. But if you would still like me to pay you in those Walmart gift cards, I think I could.
No.
One of me.
Not at all.
I ain't even gonna try to say nothing to that. I'm just gonna say thank you, because we can go on and on really about what we learned from each other, and of course we're going to be hearing that just throughout the interview. But I really do want to highlight, man, just who you are and what you are in this time, man, and your role as a participant in the shaping of not only students and not only education, but the country. As we know that the United States is in a very
it's very tense right now.
Yes.
Very tense.
I'm trying to think of all the euphemisms to use to describe the situation. And honestly, as I am thinking of euphemisms, really, there's I don't have any right words to describe the kinds of transitions that the United States is in. And I say that to say how those transitions have and are and will continue to impact literally the world. And I can say that from
absolutely.
China, seeing the different ways that the conversations are changing, the businesses have change, and they're having different kinds of conversations about continuing their networks with the United States and how they need to adapt to it. So there's a lot, man. But coming back to you, man, when we think about, we say education, and that is kind of the overarching theme for today. But man, we're going to be going to many different places here. But let me come all the way back to Juan. Where are you? Where are you right now in your life? What does time represent for you?
I'm sorry, time?
Yes, let me repeat that. Where are you, metaphorically speaking, and you can just really take liberty on how you want to answer the question, or however that really connects with you. Where are you in your life? And what does this time, this space that we're in, what does it represent for you?
Well, I used to be in a spot where education for me meant you have to strive, you have to work hard, and you have to make sure you understand what you're being taught. That was my thought going into education. When I moved to Colorado, that shift, it's been a major shift. From thinking, what is the student doing to strive and to work hard and to do, what are they doing wrong that they're not copying the other students? What are they not doing to be successful? And then coming to work to Colorado State University, it's completely changed my mind. It's like, well, what are we doing to help them prepare for college? Because yes, we're aware of first generation college students. We're aware that some of them may be low income. And recently I've started working but I've been volunteering my time with the Fostering Success program, which deals with homeless, independent foster care and independent youth. And so really shifted my thinking of, well, it's not that they're not striving hard. It's just that the support wasn't there to begin with. And for me, that has changed over time. That's for the 8 months that I've been working at CSU, it's shifted my mindset from, how do we push students to now, how am I preparing to push students? What am I doing to make sure that I'm reinforcing and that I'm being as supportive a supportive role model to students that are struggling academically, or independent background, or if they're first generation students? What am I doing to prepare for that?
You know what? As you speak, it takes me back to a conversation I had with someone else who's doing some fantastic work with inmates, and she's been running a particular program for, I guess, a number of years, maybe, I don't know, a few decades, maybe a decade or so. I'm not sure, but we talked about going into an experience where she was prepared to go and provide this service, if you will, and realized that what I've been doing is not going to work for where I am right now. And how can I change what I'm doing to adapt to the situation I'm in, as opposed to trying to reach back and say, well, this has been working, so let me continue to do it now. Right. And I hope I quoted the person correctly. But in so many words, what I'm wanting to come around to is, what has that been like to realize that we've been going the wrong way? I mean, and maybe not that we've been going the wrong way since the start, but maybe it is times have shifted in such a way that we have become so stagnant, and we have become so, it's almost like, okay, I'll finally get to the place to where I'm able to provide what I have been working on. And the true reality in some of these situations is what you've been working on has been outdated and it's no longer needed. And how do you deal with a situation with confronting that, as at the same time you still need to provide something for these students? Right. It's that transition, that very, what we call in a course or a class, is chaotic, because you know that something new needs to emerge, and you know that something new needs to happen, but you don't have what that new is. It's not fully defined, and it's almost like, how do I manage this? So right. If all that made some kind of sense, I'm going to put it back on. How has that transition been for you all at Colorado State?
So I just speaking me personally, the tools that we have accumulated with TRIO programs, with the training, I think it's still vital, and there's still relevance there. I'll give you an analogy, and someone brought this up, and I thought it was a perfect one. We've said reform, right? We've said let's reform education. That's asking for an upgrade, right? It's always asking for an upgrade. Yes. So we've upgraded the car on the outside. We've upgraded the car. We've got the new tires. We've got the new streamlining aerodynamic visual of the car. We've got it ready to go. What's missing? The engine. It's been 120 years since we've last reformed the engine of education. Wow. And we've not gotten at the heart of what it is. Yeah, we can say, here's how we're going to support students. This is what we're going to do to make sure that happens. So we have all of these systems in place. And someone brought it to my attention and said, but what are we doing with the engine? Is it the same engine that we've been running with for the last 40, 50, 60 years, and we've not changed that? Does that make any sense? And why aren't we changing that? And that's what's part of the conversation with CSU, is flipping the script on that and saying, well, what are we doing to prepare? Yeah, we've got the upgrades, but how are those upgrades going to help if we're still running on an old engine?
Wow. You know, Juan, as you speak, it makes many things bubble up, but one of the things in particular, I think, and this crazy part, I mean, this conversation between you and I go back 2010, you know, when we first started working together in Upward Bound. We were having these conversations, and not that it is new for many people. I mean, I think many people have been having the conversation, which I'm going to piggyback off of that and say, do you think we are at the place where we're finally tired of having the conversation and saying, okay, what are we going to do about it? What are we doing about it?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that we've finally reached that point where I know the American public is frustrated. I know that within some educational circles that it's that the talk of reform, it's almost of that, okay, we've had that conversation, but now what do we do to take it to the next level? What's next after that? And I think we're approaching that. If we're not there already, we're approaching it, and we're saying we've got to now take action. There's got to be something different. If something hasn't matriculated by now, something will.
Let me ask you this: if you can answer, what can you give me one strategy that you feel confident in with the direction that your campus is moving to be proactive with these students that are coming in or to serve?
Absolutely, yeah. A lot of what I enjoy about CSU is the data approach to incoming students, and not only just incoming students, but tracking how the performance of each student year to year, how that's occurring. And I can only speak for myself, and just as an outside observer, is how we use that data. For example, we're looking at academic probation students. We know that a percentage of those students will be going to academic probation. So what will be my approach? What are the tools that I can offer to a student that is either A, not prepared to go to college, two, I'm sorry, I'm going off of letters. So A, not prepared, B, that are facing family issues, C, facing mental issues, D, facing health issues. So how am I helping that? How am I honing into that, and then being able to refer them to the correct resource if they are, for example, not doing well just through their health. If that's not happening for them, if they're struggling because of their health, then what is the CSU Health Network doing to assist with that? Otherwise, if it is a student that is just academically underprepared, then it's a coaching approach, right? It's no longer advising at that point. It's really taking the student on as a mentee and being able to coach them through that first year of college, the second year of college, getting them through the semester and saying, okay, what worked, what didn't, what did you figure out about yourself? What's the class load that you can handle? I think that's the conversation that some of the colleges outside of CSU that maybe they're not asking the students is and taken seriously is, hey, maybe 12 credit hours is the most you can handle. And let's talk about how we can do 12 credit hours and see how that works for you. Because I think, and this is just my assumption, students really try to be done with a degree. They want to be finished. They want to get that college degree. So they overwhelm themselves with 18 or more credit hours. And they don't know that could have an adverse effect on their academic performance. And then, so CSU being proactive in identifying that and saying, let's talk about your plan. Let's talk about your strategy. How is it effective for you? And is it lining up with the goals that you have set for yourself?
Wow. Let me, I'm taking thoughts in at the moment.
Oh, yeah, man.
Because, and I want to say I'm redundant. It's so many of the conversations that we have. Firstly, it doesn't amaze me, but it does amaze me that both of us are in the place now where we are still mentoring students. So that was one of the things that came to mind.
Right.
And we're still in the position where we are helping to influence and mold students to keep them engaged with their directions. And you probably didn't say this, but as you were speaking, this is what was emerging, if you will, coming up. Students being able to take more control over the direction of the academics. And that seemed like a lot put together, but
yeah,
them really having an idea of what those outcomes look like. And what I mean by that is making a connection with their degree and their career. And where I've been in my mind is how many students really know let me rephrase it. How much of the work industries are prepared for what students really want to go into, and what they would really like to do? And let me kind of give you some background on where I'm coming from. Been having conversations with a wonderful young lady in California about technology and how the ideas of technology highly influence in directions of our workforce. And of course, we know technology in general has always radically changed every system that we humans are involved in. And one of the things that have come up in our conversations that she attended some conference or meeting with Citibank was the three things that are going to be critical for people in general to stay afloat of the world of technology is creativity, social intelligence, and originality. When I think about some of our students that we've talked about before who naturally have these kinds of abilities and they have this capacity, and I think we're going to see many more students who are going to come with these very unique experiences and these very unique ideas that are going to make a change in the work world. On the flip side of that, is the work world going to support and provide the kinds of systems that are needed to support the coming generation? And how quickly will the academic institutions adapt to that change? Because essentially the academic institution is the middle person, if you will, or the middle entity to prepare students for the work world. But if students are already come prepared, because we think about all the access that students have to the internet and videos and self-making, you know, what we're doing right now, kids in elementary are now starting their own YouTube shows, their own using networks in such an incredible way that I'm still trying to catch up with how to use some of these functions. But they're already making strides to really advance these kinds of technologies and use them in a way that they're creating their own market, they're creating their own space. But we're still telling students it's so important to go to university and to go to college. But what do you do when a college or university is not equipped to prepare these students who are coming very well equipped with their own set of skills, but we haven't provided the right environment for them? And, you know, again, all the changes that are coming with that. I don't know how to bring all that into like one question, but that's what you help to kind of bring out of me. And I'm like trying to find a way to narrow and to funnel that down. But that's just what I felt compelled to kind of communicate. And there it is. Woo, there it is. Now go with that.
Yeah.
What's your response to what I said?
Absolutely. I think the core of the question is how 4-year universities, 2-year universities, vocational schools, how are they preparing our students to be ready for businesses that are already adapting different technologies, that are already adapting of ways of how students learn.
You're good at this, Juan. You're good at this. Continue. Make some sense out of what I just said, dang it.
Yeah, so the core of the question is how are schools prepared? How are we adapting not only to the student but to the businesses that are having their own needs? Right. That's the core of the question. And I think we're seeing a rebirth of education now. That we've tried the model of that I don't know how to call it, that the agriculture model, the agriculture model, where The students that from elementary to high school, we're kind of just the idea is we're delaying that. We're delaying the students having to get out of school just so they won't have to join the job market so quick. So from K to 12, there's a delay. For agriculture, for private business, for whatever, that way the students are not having to jump over to the private workforce or to the public workforce so quickly. And, the economy, the job economy does not have to, of course, absorb all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So where this model used to work back in the 50s, back in the 60s, now we're seeing it's a shift, right? Agriculture is still important. It's still very valuable. But we're seeing the tech industries, and we're seeing much more other businesses doing other things that are not aligning with how our public school systems are going, nor are they flexible with what the 2-year, 4-year institutions are doing. So now it's back on the identity of the university, which I'm going to come back to identities later when we talk about politics.
Let's do it.
But I think education is facing its own identity crisis, where do we fit in the grand scheme of things? If now we're saying that students can be prepared right out of high school to take some of these entry level or maybe some more advanced level jobs, where is our place? You see private for-profit schools like University of Phoenix or Kaplan or any one of those other schools where they're saying, yeah, we're ready for that. We're adapting. But then we see the malicious practices that they make and how they underprepare the student, and how the student feels that they really didn't get anything from those private schools or from those for-profit schools. But there are some that are trying to do good work, and they're trying to say, I know I've been pretty harsh on the University of Phoenix, for example, where students are still feeling that they're underprepared. But there are some students that are saying, no, I'm prepared. I feel like with a degree from a for-profit school that I feel like it can move forward. But there's still plenty of work to be done in education right now as we go through our identity crisis and trying to figure out, well, where do we fit in that overall model?
Wow.
Because it's no longer the public is no longer saying delay the student. Now the student is pushing back and saying, be ready for me. Wow. Because now we want to try something different. Mm-hmm. And so it's schools overall facing an identity crisis, and it's having to figure that out.
Wow. Juan, boy, I just want to slap your mouth metaphorically. I know that's not the most professional thing for me to say. I know it.
You bring that out of me. You and I, when we're thinking, I try to like make this make sense in my mind, and then as I start talking, I think I'm just rambling sometimes. But I don't know.
Look, this is for those, as we share, for those who don't know, man. This is the way we did it on our radio show. Really, the radio show that we had, man, it was an extension of our conversations during our road trips, our private times, man. It really was an extension, and that's what this is. There's obviously been moments, even as you and I spoke, where it appears to be rambling, but it's a live just thought happening, and you're seeing things come together in a way that sometimes it seems that, man, these things are so disconnected. But then when you realize, wait a minute, no, these things are highly connected, and you're seeing the trickle down effect. You're seeing the percolations of how this is impacting that, and on and on. Anyway, Juan, as you talk about the educational crises, and as we look at our generation, I think we're still considered as the older parts of the millennials. But
we're the older millennials, yeah.
As we think about the population of the millennials, and man, there's so many directions that I can go with this generation, from politics to religion to education, and all areas, man, that have been a really critical, big changes to how we're viewing the future. But looking at education in particular and the crisis that's happening, you being a father of three, if hopefully you don't mind putting it out there like that, I'm sure you're very.
Oh, no, not of mine at all.
and married for 14 years. This is his 14-year anniversary, so I'm just doing a little celebration for the. But you being a father of three and seeing a very different generation, I believe they will be called as the digital age and the digital natives, as we talked about before. I think, are they the 1996 or 97? Is that the start of the digital natives? I don't remember.
I believe you're right. It's any time between 1990, I think it's 94, actually, 94 or 95. Any time from that forward is those children have never known to never have the internet. Their entire life has been, the internet has always been there. It's always been there, and it's never gone away.
So thinking about that group of kids, and now some of them being young adults, are there any prediction, and you still working with a very younger population, are there any predictions on what that future looks like in terms of accommodations and adapting to them? I mean, I know that in some cases it is, maybe for some, throw the baby out and the bathwater, and some are saying, no, let's keep some of this system, but maybe reform and remodel. Are there any particular and interesting predictions that are being made on your end about this generation coming through?
Yeah. Well, for any predictions, I would say, I don't know if you've seen the documentary Ivory Tower by CNN. It's a very powerful documentary. Recommend you that you watch it. It's very good. What they looked at was kind of the whole college experience, right? And how it's supposed to provide a holistic experience to the student. And in the documentary, they talk about how there are certain colleges that are preparing students in a different way. One that I can think of is based on Silicon Valley over in California, where they're saying, you know what, for students that decide to defer and say, take a break from college, don't go immediately into college, how about we give you a scholarship or an I can't remember what they termed it, but they said, let's give you some money to see if you can start your own tech business. Rod, these are tech companies encouraging students to not go to school, don't do the college experience, and let's invest in your future by giving you some startup money. Wow. See what new ideas you have. And then there's other colleges that are preparing students with in different ways. There's a school out there in I can't remember, is it Nevada or Utah, where it's an all boys college, and they're preparing them with life skills, but they're also talking about philosophy and poems, and the idea is, the student may want to just go back to working construction, or they want to do farmhand work, or they want to do something with their hands where they're still feeling like they're contributing. But it's not a bad idea that we also introduce geometry and philosophy to them. That way they can think about the outside world as they're working with their hands.
Wow.
So there are various schools that are trying different things. And my personal prediction is that we're going to get to a point in the digital age, now that we've got internet access, smartphones, and internet that has been powering us since it came into fruition, that we're going to come to a point where we're going to say, there's got to be a way where we infuse the classroom with technology. And by that, I don't mean, you've seen the traditional hybrid classes, right? Where some of this stuff you can find on PowerPoint through Canvas or through Blackboard. You can find this information. I think we're going to get to a point where the students are able to interact in the classroom using digital holograms and being able to interact more with the class. And by that, I mean making the textbook come to life. And I think we're getting to that point where we're realizing that textbooks, yes, it has a chock full of good information, but And honestly speaking, how many other students are really reading those textbooks? And how can we make those textbooks come to life? So I think we're getting to that point.
Juan, the last question that you asked, I mean, it being a rhetorical question, but I think we've had this conversation before too. As we would talk to our own cohort of students and would share, I guess, looking back, what's best practices or what are the best things to be aware of when you go through your college experience, or what would you do differently, something in those kind of terms. But oftentimes my response would be, one of the things I would go back and change is read all of my textbooks. And,
Same. Shoot, me too. Me too.
And you wonder, and maybe with our new knowledge, maybe we would not have the same response, but I am remembering that those were some of the things that I would tell students. But, you wonder about these ideas of, taking so many credit hours, 12 hours is full-time, and it's considered to be the minimum full-time for most U.S. colleges and universities. But then, as we think about quality over quantity, that understood that 12 hours is going to be full-time for the students, and they really need to focus their time as if it was a full-time job. And, now what is going to be that balance of, well, how much is too much in the class? Because you and I know, especially during our master's program, we were reading, I don't know how many books a week, from each class.
Yeah.
And you
go ahead. No, I was just gonna say, like, it was during the master's classes that I really felt like we dove into the textbook. There was no option. You had to really become familiar with the material. As an undergraduate, it just felt like you could skim the information and feel like you can get by. But maybe it's a shift in thinking, or as you were alluding to earlier, are we putting too much value on a full-time student saying that it's 12 credit hours? Why can't we allow students to say, you could take 8 credit hours and still qualify for financial aid, and still look at that as full-time, and still value that as, I know that we don't want to overwhelm you by saying, take 12 credit hours in order to be a full-time student, but take 8 credit hours. Don't overwhelm yourself. Still have the support there while not overwhelming the student.
Yes. And to add to it, making sure that the students can remember their experience.
Absolutely.
Because there's classes I've taken. If you would have asked me anything about the course, I would be I remember going to class. I like typing.
I can typing.
I like turtles,
I like turtles.
It's that moment where you realize, man, there was so much that was happening in that class. I don't even remember most of it. I remember being there. I remember having, in some classes, good conversations. But there's a few classes, man, I just remember going into, and just from the time that we started to the time that we finished, we wrote notes, and it was just a combination of trying to listen to what new information was coming from the class and making sure you did not miss whatever notes that were wrote on the board.
Right.
And you really have to step back and speculate, these kinds of experiences, how much quality are people experiencing during the class. And yes, I fully agree, and I fully believe that it is not the responsibility of the professor to teach you. And maybe we need to come back and say, or is it? But you wonder, as we've talked about before, what's the difference between a Harvard graduate and some podunk university that no one's ever heard of? What's the difference between the quality of those degrees? Is it really because of the access, or is it the quality of the student, or the quality work that they do in the classes.
All right.
You know what that means and what direction I want to go with that statement. I don't know, but I feel like it just. Okay, so
those are very good questions that I still believe that administrators across many universities are still trying to figure out. What is the quality education that you're getting here? I think at Eastern New Mexico University, I think you remember the motto, student success. That's what it's all about. Mm-hmm. It's such a broad statement, and not to bash at Eastern, because again, that's my alma mater. That's you and I. That's where we come from.
Yes.
But that's such a broad statement that I feel like student success could mean anything then.
Yeah.
Are we quantifying that success in some way?
Wow.
If student success is what it's all about, then what we're saying is 100% completion rate for degrees should be within our realm of possibility. Mm-hmm. And I feel that at times Eastern kind of skirts around that and says, well, no, we're just trying to really enhance the student, or many administrators would throw out words that would kind of sidestep the issue. But for me, it's like I've told you, as I've developed, as I've grown as a professional, and now coming to work for a CSU and what they do here, I'm really valuing the quantitative approach and the data approach of what we're saying when we say student success. How does that look like? How do we measure that? And what does it mean? But there's also still that, my research, I was a qualitative person. So I used some quantitative, but I was a very qualitative, very descriptive. For me, it's also, so now that we have the data, what does it all mean? How do we put all that together? So you were raising pretty good questions, and I think we're just scratching at the iceberg at that, and we're still trying to delve into what does this all mean.
And you really, I guess it dovetailed, kind of, whatever. But I'm gonna come back into that, because I think I want to revisit something that we've talked about before about statistical pornography, and how we have everything is about statistics, and everything is about data, and everything is about, let's create a matrix for this, let's do a follow-up on it. And we get it. I mean, we've stayed up to 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning submitting annual performance reports for our programs and making sure that we collect all the data and demonstrate needs for the funds that we were having for our programs. Like, we get it. We get it. We understand the importance of it. But on the other side of quality and really defining what is quality, and are the numbers so indicative of our success that it overshadows a student graduating and still saying, I am not prepared to do the kind of work that my degree says I should do. I have gone into the industry. I have applied for this particular job market, and I still do not feel qualified. And not only a feeling, but the places that I am applying saying I'm not prepared and I'm not qualified. So is data becoming the new God? And has it been the God of the academics in such a way that it overshadows and it mutes a lot of critical information that is slipping through the cracks, and we're not paying attention to because we're so, okay, well, the numbers say, well, the data says, well, this is how we're measuring success. And it's like, I get it, you're measuring success. Kudos, great. But are your measurements actually helping the quality of the student? And what does that even mean? So yeah. You struck a chord with me, baby.
I think you make a very important point that with data, sure, that it can only carry us so far, right? Mm-hmm. That now we know, for example, at various institutions, they can give you a statistic on how many students will be on academic probation on their first year. They can give you that statistic. How many of those universities or institutions are actually doing anything about that? Wow. And I think that's what the core of your question is what are you doing to address the percentage gap? So what are you going to do now? What do we do to address academic probation or
Well, I
dismissals.
love you, man. You just
Stop.
You know
Stop
me
it.
corazón, Baba. You know me corazón.
But it's to your point. It's a very valid concern, and I think again, depending on which university you ask or which institution you ask, they're going to come up with a different answer. They're going to say, "Well, academic probation. This is just what we know." And again, I keep coming back to Eastern because again, that's where we grew up. That's what we know. I feel that Eastern knew how many students were going into academic probation or fell below 2.0, and were they doing anything proactive to address it? I can't tell you that. I wish I knew on that end what was happening. What I can tell you is that different institutions do different things. Now that I've kind of gotten a bigger scope of what CU does, CSU, FRCC, various other institutions in Colorado, and looking at New Mexico and UNM and see what they're doing, that every institution has a different approach. And when they look at their data and they say, well, 35% of our students for sure will be in academic probation, then the question becomes, well, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do to make sure that the next cohort or even the current cohort that you have, you're either retaining them or that you're helping them get off of academic probation? What are some of the initiatives that you have that will help a student kind of crawl back from having to be in academic probation? Now, the question about your about the having a job and having be a job ready student, right? I think the major concern now still is that how much are universities and institutions investing to not only a career center, but a full-fledged kind of a student career services center where a student can go in and say, here are the skills that I lack. What do I need to do to remediate that? Again, it varies from institution to institution. CSU, I know, has various initiatives that address that. I can say the same thing probably for CU, that they have some initiatives that they have going on. Eastern, for what we both know, that we do have a career services. How extensive? Unknown. I've never had to use their services, but again, it just varies from institution to institution. What they do with that data and how they implement it to help the student really speaks volumes, right, on the institution's part. Because how much money are they willing to invest? How many resources are they willing to throw at that and say, this is how we're going to address. If we're promising a student that they will for sure get a job within their field, what are we going to do to address that? How many resources are we going to throw to that to make sure that happens?
That's good. And let me reference something that we would often reference as well. Not being the fish that's not wet kind of concept.
Right.
I am not even though I'm raising the questions, and I'm currently working in a university as well, an online platform. These are some of the questions that I'm asking myself, and more questions are building just as you and I communicate. Because by no means am I saying, throw the data out and let's not pay attention to the data. But what I am hoping to communicate is the balance and consuming the data. And I don't know myself. Clearly, I don't know how to answer some of the questions that I've voiced during this interview and some of the other questions that I've had to think about in previous experiences, because we're working with a vast community of students from across the planet, and you deal with different cultural situations. And I think that's going to be a common thread in any university, because you have so many different people in those universities that are Native Americans, all the way from, they're coming from China, they're coming from Japan, they're coming from all over the planet. But what I'm learning, and I think you probably have this sense as well, is that, man, even from state to state, there's so many kind of unique situations, because when we look at a New Mexico, and we look at a New Mexico situation with many of the reserves that are there, and many of the, you know, Native American communities that are enrolling into institutions, and their set of experiences are a lot different from some of the experiences that our students who are having in, yes, small town rural Portales or, you know, Clovis, but it's still a semi-urban city kind of experience as opposed to being raised on a reserve kind of experience. And so just kind of voicing that as we think about all the unique differences, not only in the way that data has been interpreted, but the kind of experiences that students are having and the need to look at that data very differently in some cases. With all that being said, is there a need for universities? Is there still a need for universities, given with some of the stuff that we've talked about so far?
I still believe that there's still a strong need for universities, especially, and I'm sorry, I'm going to get political for a moment.
Go for it.
In the climate, especially in a climate that we are in today, where science is doubted and where academia is, it's almost, in a sense, kind of put in a back burner and said it's being mocked. For me, more than ever, colleges, institutions, universities, whatever terminology you'd like to use to describe it, they play still a critical role in reminding civilization, society, that we always strive to learn.
And I hope you would know my answer to the question. Yes, there's definitely a need for it, but my conjunction out there. As you've created this imagery, you've created this idea. From my last interview, the word mything has been coming up more often than not, and I'm going to go right now because. Wait, we've lost Juan for a moment. Hopefully he comes back. Are you there? Okay, there you are.
Sorry.
No problem. As I know that the word mything and those kind of things they've been, you know, pretty popular kind of buzzwords for decades, but I'm finding that it's having more presence in my communication here lately or recently. And I think that I'll continue to go with that direction until I sense differently. But, you know, as even you are mything kind of the ideas of these predictions of where education is going and how education needs to, or how it's probably going to look in terms of reform. And I think that what I'm believing, what I want to share in that same space is the extension of what university is and what it looks like, the evolution of university or college and what that looks like, and the kinds of questions and topics that we talk about that, you know, in some areas, yes, I believe that we are so past conversation. Like, we should have stopped talking about certain changes long ago, and we should have been more proactive and at least trying things instead of being inhibited by information. We should have at least been saying, listen, let's do what previous people have done before us, and that is try, fail, and find the right thing that works for the time being, and when that should go with it. But I think we've become so paralyzed by data. But anyway, that there's an extension, there's evolution that needs to happen. I think that's what we're sensing right now, that we're in the middle of an evolutionary experience in many different areas. But as we think about education and we think about academics, we are definitely in an evolutionary period. We got to be aware of it, and we got to have some vision about what that's looking like. Now,
to dovetail out of your conversation, I think what you're getting at is there have been, of course, conversations that that I've been a part of that have said, you know what, universities and colleges really live in their own little bubble because they are no longer expanding out and trying things like they used to. Wow. They're kind of just living in their own little bubble. I know that for Eastern, that was probably the case, where it was kind of, it was its own culture, its own thing. And with various institutions, I can only speak with my experience with CSU. It's the going beyond the fear and saying, we're going to try things within our community, and we're gonna revolutionize things. If we fail, it's okay. We're gonna keep pushing forward, because ultimately what we want to do is benefit our community or benefit our state. And kudos to those universities and those institutions that are not afraid to live outside of their bubble and say, we're going to try this here. Let's see how that works. If it doesn't, go back to the drawing board and try again. So it's that, like you were saying, try, fail, try again, try, fail, try again. And it's that continuous pattern, something that will allow the university or institution to continue to be evolving as it grows. It's this continuous evolution, right? That it goes from one thing to another. And in that same conversation, when we talk about being a benefit to community, being a benefit to other things, but at the same time also saying that we're not forgetting our past or our history, that we're going to continue offering liberal art degrees, for example. I know that liberal art degrees have received a bad rap as of late in the conservative news media and the conservative radio talk shows, where they mock students that have liberal arts degrees. And for me, it's when a university invests in a degree program, they fully believe that there's still value there, that there's value for that degree program, that there's and in many ways they go beyond the data, right? And they say, yeah, maybe not a lot of students are majoring this, but we see the value and we see the potential in this still.
Man, you know, Juan, until you just said something, I didn't think about Eastern being a separate community. I mean, I knew it. And again, this is no bash on Eastern. I mean, I think both of us, we love ENMU. I mean, it was a great institution academically and professionally. But until you just said something, until you exposed a very insecure spot for the institution, I didn't realize how much it's separate. It was a separate community. It was a city.
It really was
within the city of Portales. And there was not much, to my knowledge, there wasn't a lot of going out into the community and making change within the community. I mean, yeah, you had a lot of students who were transitioning into being professional teachers, that it was convenient to go into the high schools and junior highs and local school systems. And for those teachers, that was a good partnership. But I don't know if that was a common culture across the university to do that.
Right.
Within different industries in the towns. As small as it was, it's really making me have to go back and think like, wow, man, no, that wasn't a common culture within our university. I'm going to come here when I talk about culture. Do you think that we are creating a culture that is becoming more sensitive to failures and becoming more of a culture of forgiveness, if you will, to failures? Because we know that when you try something and it doesn't work, you're always going to have the naysayers that say, see, we tried it and it didn't work. It broke.
Yeah.
And hey, I know what it's like to be on both sides of that field, where it's like, okay, let's just try it and let's see what comes of this. And you get the backlash, and it's like, you feel like crap and you don't want to go through the experience, and you realize that, man, we got to do something different. But then it's like, well, what do I do different? Because people are not on board with it or what have you. But do you think that as we are kind of revisiting the lives of, you know, the Benjamin Franklins and the that escaped me. The names are escaping me. Anyway, the great scientists who have made incredible contributions to our world today and the many failures that they've had. Do you think that we're now coming back to a space where we can say, hey, this was their evolutionary process. Why are we not being privy to this? Or why are we ignoring that process and not being as forgiving to people, knowing the kinds of results that these kinds of failures have provided us today? Does that make sense? Now, you've been simplifying these things.
I feel you.
How you do that? What you think that comes from that?
I think what you're getting at is, from what we've known and how we've worked with students, we've learned that our current population, right? They like that instant gratification. That I want to see it succeed the first time. And I think for us, the older millennials, it's looking back at that generation and saying, look, it's okay to fail. It's okay to not be successful the first time. It's not going to work perfectly, or even if at all. I think we're getting to a point where we're going back to that hardworking process, right? Where it's a trial by fire. Well, not a trial by fire. Sorry, that's a wrong thing to say. It's a process. It's going back to that process system. If it doesn't work, try something else. I feel like we're getting back to that. We're a bit more forgiving now that I think for us older millennials, it's trying to teach the younger generation that it's okay. It's fine. You messed up. It's nothing on you. It's nothing that speaks badly of you. It doesn't say that you're a bad academic person because something didn't work out. Yeah. It's now going back to the drawing board and saying, okay, what do we do differently? What do we try? So, and it's recognizing that I think for the most part, we've had a culture of this very self-centered, I'll do it on my own. I'm going to get the glory and the rewards for everything that I've done. And we're coming back to a partnership where it's I'll help you, you help me. We'll get past this. Whatever issues we run into, I'll see you. I'll lend you my eyes. I lend you my ears and see what's going on, and let's examine it together. So yeah, I think we're getting back to that. We're getting back to that hardworking process.
Excellent. And I think this may be one of the last things I'll say about this whole education concept, this part. But more than forgiveness, honesty. You sense that, I say this generation, but I mean, honesty transcends generations. But I'm going to formulate my question this way. Do you think that as we are transparent and we are honest about not being the fish that's not wet and not being the crispiest chip in the bag? And you like that, didn't you?
I like that. And that was a good callback. That was a good callback.
That was my throwback.
That was good.
From way back.
That was good.
Do you think that this generation, as they are coming through and they can see that, wait a minute, the system that claims to be the creme de la creme is not on their A game, and trying to BS me with some stuff and saying it's your fault because my data says that you should be doing A, B, and C. So therefore, it's not me, it's you. And it's a game of your fault, my fault, your fault, my fault. Do you think that if we just popularize transparency in a way, that's going to be a critical piece to merge and to build and to move forward?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think what institutions and universities across our nation and probably across the world need to realize is we need to be clear with the students of what abilities and skills they're gaining as they go through each year of college, right? Because it used to be back in the 50s, back in the 60s, where a student can be put in the dark and say, I'm just going to have a college experience. I'm going to have some skills after this. I know that. But now students are a bit more hesitant, right? Because now I think out of many years of providing financial aid and doing college prep in high schools, students are a little bit more aware of not only college cost, but what is the value that I'm getting out of this college education? What am I getting out of this? And as universities and institutions, I know Front Range Community College and various institutions across Colorado. I know New Mexico is attempting to do a better job of being clear of, here are the skills you're gaining. Here's where it's going to relate to your field, and also being transparent on varieties of levels of. For example, I had a student talk to me about, why is information systems 151 important to me? Why do I need to take that? And to sit down and explain that, yeah, we're living in the modern age. It would be nice for you to learn about Word, PowerPoint, Excel. Those are some vital skills. And like you said, that we're now living in a world where there are digital natives, where there are students that have known technology all their life. And to see that some still struggle with the concept of technology, it's a little, not disheartening. That's not the right word. It's a bit troubling, because it baffles the data. It baffles the administration, because the assumption is, you're young, you should know technology, you should know it Word inside out. And we have students that are like, I've never had a computer in my life, and now you're telling me I have to take information systems. Wow. What is that?
Wow.
So all they've learned is how to manipulate an iPhone or an Android phone to tell it what to do. But to go outside of that and say, here's a personal computer, now open up Word and create a document. And that becomes a struggle for some students.
Wow.
And I think going back to that transparency part, yes, we need to be clear and upfront of why those classes matter, why Math 101 is related to the degree field that you want to go to. Why is it considered a general requirement? Why do I need to know it?
And let me give another side of transparency on some of where I was coming from with that, and thank you for even sharing that aspect, because that opens up another conversation. But I was also thinking from the administrative side of university or education institutions, of saying at this point, as we are in a very evolutionary time of education, being able to say, we don't have the answer. We don't have all the answers. In fact, we are going through a reconstruction, a reformation ourselves. But in the meantime, here's what we can offer, and here's what we are sure of. And I know that is PR suicide for schools who are trying to gain more students and to market and to keep all of the necessary parts of retention. I get that you don't want to talk about the bad of your company or your institutions, but I'm wondering, with the generation that is coming up, and those who are, quite frankly, even as adults, who are enrolling and have enrolled, and they realize that there's too many holes in the system, but we don't want, as an institution, we don't want to talk about those holes. We just say, well, thank you for your information. It's you and not us. So either make a decision to come to our school, our campuses, and get a degree, or go your own way. Even as we think about the data that we would get for our programs, and how many of our students, or how many schools had a humongous problem with truancy, and how many of those students were not being documented, because if the actual numbers were to be produced, how much funding would be taken away from the schools, and they would be closed down. But those kinds of things, I don't know what the balance would be to say, hey, do we share this information and risk losing our funds and losing jobs and blah, 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 blah? Or do we conceal this? But I'm wondering, when I talk about transparency, those kinds of issues of just saying, hey, we don't have it together, but here's where we are. Don't you start yawning on me, Juan. Don't you?
I'm sorry. My bad.
Oh my gosh, it's not like that. This is going to have to be definitely a part 2. But if you want to respond to that, and then we start bringing this to an end, man, it's been freaking amazing.
Yeah. So, going off to what you're saying about transparency and so I guess 2 questions still come to mind. Is we're still looking at data as truancy that you put for your example, and I think it's using the data to finding a way to make the data fit the narrative of your school, right?
Yes.
And I guess, and I'm really trying to shy away from using words like schools manipulating data, because I just really don't want to say that.
We'll go.
But what I want to say,
another word, a better word comes.
Okay, but I do want to say that with our experiences with the high schools that we worked with, it was right. It was that being left in the dark. What are the true numbers of the students that we're not seeing and that we're not serving because the concealment of data.
Right.
It's that transparency part that you had mentioned that is troubling, and it's not troubling just for the high schools. It's troubling for many universities, because what data could be concealed, what data is not being shared, that is not giving us a full picture of degree programs or successful job searches, and things like that. So yeah, that's definitely something we need to be concerned about. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Juan, thank you so much for your time. Yeah, this will definitely have to be an extended. Can I squeeze one more question out of you as we wrap up?
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Thank you. Listen, I want you to spend the last part of this speaking about the political climate that we're in, and how talk about how it's impacted education. How it's,
Yes.
I feel a second wind has come. But how has that shift impacted your world? And that is a big question, but everything that's in your world, from the Latino communities, the all of that, everything your world represents. How is this impacting you? Talk about that.
Well, you know that with the current political climate, very tough. I was very concerned about how the Latino community would be perceived. We're seeing an uptick of racially charged aggression. I'm not sure if you've seen the YouTube videos or if you've seen anything pertaining to how emboldened a lot of the Trump supporters feel when they're in public spaces, that they can call out a Latino, someone from the Middle East, someone from China, someone from South America, wherever they're from, wherever they hail. And Trump supporters feel like they can now say, this is not your home. You do not belong here, and we want you out. There's been various instances.
I've been hearing about some of this, and yes, speak to this. Yeah,
it is a huge concern, especially for my kids. And a part of this, I want to say, it's a lot of ignorant type of mentality that says this country, for some reason, they feel like they own it when they never really did. And it's this political climate, how it's impacted education. We're now getting, I'm seeing an increase of hostility toward education, where I'm not sure if you heard the term snowflake, or snowflakes meaning liberals and people with a university background. So those are snowflakes, according to the right wing, because they feel that we get offended easily over things, right? And for me, it's now apparent to me that this country has never really, and I think we've had this conversation before, it's racism and prejudice has always been subtle, but now in a Trump America, it's more overt and more aggressive. And for education, what does that mean? Does that mean that controversial speakers get to speak on our platform and spew hate messages if they want? It almost contradicts the university, right? Because it's either does the university still provide a platform to controversial speakers that are spewing hate speech, even though the university is trying to provide an atmosphere, an environment where it's inclusive. So we reached a paradox. I'm not sure if you heard what happened with the University of California in Berkeley, but a figure, his name is Milo something or other, was invited to speak. Very controversial figure, very conservative and very just very extreme in his views. Well, the students of Berkeley just didn't want any of that, so they started rioting right there at the where the person was scheduled to speak. So they rioted, and of course they canceled the speaker. They said maybe he'll speak another time, but what ended up happening was University of California in Berkeley now faced its own identity crisis, and it said, well, are we a platform for free speech, or are we a platform to protect students from hateful speech?
Wow.
And that is when I say identity crisis for not only education, I'm saying in America, period, we're having that identity crisis. Very, very tense, where any wrong statement could set somebody off. There was a YouTube video where a gentleman was speaking Spanish, and a white patron was there, and he said, "You know what? You're in America. Speak English." And it's now becoming more and more prevalent. It's becoming more acceptable to do that, to confront people like that. And it's unacceptable. It's still in my eyes. It's still that's shameful. That's disgusting that happens. But it's evident now with the election of Donald Trump that it's almost saying that behavior is okay now.
Wow. You know, some of the stories that you mentioned I was aware of, and some of them, no, the Berkeley thing I didn't hear anything about. And, you know, I've followed as much as I, one, can, and then two, as much as I can tolerate.
Right.
I mean, for obvious reasons, I think there's times that you really got to just pull back and not participate, for me. But, you know, one of the shining moments in listening to different artists and different people within my sphere talk about some of these things is the younger generation, for the most part, who are just not having it. I mean, they have grown in a world where it is blended. I mean, yes, they see the race, and I'm not saying go colorblind and I'll only see the person. I'm not saying that, because that has its own set of issues. But they have blended in a way where the kinds of things that in our lifetime, or even in the lifetimes of our grandparents, the very harsh racial kinds of things that were going on, I don't think that they're having some of the same experiences. However, I have been privy to some of the situations in elementary schools and junior highs where there have been students who have felt very comfortable to make very racial comments to their counterparts, and it has created lots of tension. And it does make you wonder, like, wait a minute, did we just step back into the 1950s or 60s? Why are we still having these kinds of issues with a generation that this is, well, to some of our knowledge, we would think it's just not a part of the experience. Anyway, where was I going with that? Your children, have they sensed any differences, and have they come home to share some of those differences since inauguration, and since, well, and really most of this drama was developed and built up way before the inauguration. Have they started to sense some of that, and have they brought that home to you? And how, if so, how have you and your wife decided to deal with that?
I think for the younger two, they're still too young to understand what political climate we're living in. And so it's for them, it's, you know, week to week, day to day, month to month type of thing. But for Junior, the oldest one, he is the one that's a little bit more now politically aware of what's happening. And we talk about, for example, when me and him, when we talk about Trump and when we talk about policies that are being pushed forward, and I ask him how he feels about that and how his reaction is immediate. Sometimes I hope it's not me trying to instill my liberal ideas to him, that I'm hoping that he's formulating his own opinions and he's formulating his own thoughts, and I'm sure he is. But when he tells me, you know what, there's a difference when my school, when you're told you can't talk about Trump right now, let's not talk about politics, that there's a difference. And for him, I know he's very anti-Trump, and for Junior, it's been, I want to be able to talk about it when I can, whenever I want, and it's been Melinda and I having to teach him, like, you can't talk about it openly all the time, because maybe people are still either traumatized or they're still very for Trump, that they don't want to. They're very confrontational about it. So we're cautioning him about the confrontation he may receive, just bringing up the name Trump.
You know, it does make me think of during the Trayvon Martin situation, where there was an email sent out saying that we should not discuss this matter, and it should not be in so many words, it shouldn't be a conversation in the university.
Oh wow!
And
I remember that.
You remember, and I get it, and I got it as an administrator. But on the other side, as a university, and as you described what the university is supposed to represent in terms of free speech and all of those things, and really, you know, coming back to its own identity crisis of where does the university stand in these kind of controversial times that, you know, before the university was a place to have these kinds of conversations and to do it in a civil way that would allow people to deal with the issues and hopefully not only vent, but also give some instruction or give some direction or set a precedence on how the larger communities should deal with this through conversation as opposed to violence. And it's interesting. I think to resort to the general, it's definitely an interesting time. It's exciting times, interesting times, and you know, I do wonder how the younger kids are going to, how this is shaping their world as well, and how will they adapt to these changes in lieu of so many other changes that are happening around them as well. So I'm going to transition here. What is your work? What are you working on in terms of academics, and as you are pursuing your PhD and as you are going into the academic environment again as a research student, as you've done your research before? You can even talk about some of that research that you've done during your master's program. Do you plan to extend that research during your doctoral experience, or what do you see? Where are you in terms of your work? I know what your profession is right now, but with your work that represents you and what you want to contribute to the larger community, what is it?
Oh yeah.
Inform us about that.
It's the last work that I did, and this was last year, examining newspapers from Arizona and New Mexico to see the language they use to describe illegal immigration or undocumented citizens, denizens, non-citizens. So that broad range. And from what I've been able to gather, New Mexico was more of the neutral newspaper that really didn't want to paint a negative light on illegal immigration, whereas Arizona was a little bit more forward with it and trying to distinguish this is illegal immigration. These are illegal immigrants. By law, they should not be here. And whereas New Mexico would take a tone of these are citizens, denizens, they belong to a community. The federal law, this federal statute, is something that many cities will abide by, but it should be optional for states. Go ahead.
Juan, remind me, denizens. I know I've heard the word before. I know, but remind me, please.
So a denizen is it's along the same terminology as a citizen. A denizen is a temporary citizen of a particular region or a particular city. They're there for a while. And for me, I've been trying to push and using denizen as a much more appropriate terminology for undocumented, because when we say undocumented, it almost like it invalidates this person's contribution to the community. When many denizens have held jobs, have contributed taxes, have held important positions with the community. So for me, it's being able to validate that by classifying them as denizens.
Nice. Oh my gosh, Juan! Oh my! It's been a long time, man. It has been.
It has been, Rod. It has been. Yes.
Man, this has been so refreshing for me, man. It has been refreshing.
Oh, that's good. Likewise, man. Likewise.
To be able to connect and have these conversations, man. And
absolutely.
Who would have thunk, that we talked about continuing these kinds of conversations. And working together once again in some capacity, man. And I'm so glad that we're back here. And wherever this leads, it doesn't matter. I know that we'll stay connected, but I think to work together in this kind of way is I like it and I prefer it.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Listen, I thank you so much for your time, and I feel a sense of completion now that we've had that part of the conversation. And I'm just going to tell you that we will be doing another interview together.
Oh, absolutely. Got to follow up.
And man, I'll send you the material that I told you about from one of my classes, give you a chance to look at it and see how it sits with you, and we can make some of that in our next conversation. But
I look forward to it. Yes.
Tell our audience where they can maybe find you if they want to know more about you, and if they want to conversations. So speak to us, Juan. Yeah.
So that you can look me up at the Colorado State University website at colostate.edu. You can do a basic search on the CSU website for Juan Rivas. You will find my contact information there. My email is juan.rivas@colostate.edu. And I am right now in my 9th month working at CSU. It's making as many connections as possible, trying to make those connections happen. That way I can either benefit from your conversations or vice versa, where I can maybe interject and see maybe some ideas that I have. But I'd love to have open conversation or any questions that I can address. Absolutely.
And I am hoping to, I don't think I have to do much persuasion. Juan is his own man, but encourage him rather to start back his own radio show, and I could be a guest on the radio show because
someday,
man,
someday,
fantastic. His priorities are definitely in the right place, which is on his family right now. So I feel them there.
Yeah.
In the meantime,
Yes.
you can have a couch on Old Soulz, and we can let it rip until you start to restart your show, man. But
thank you, Rod.
great. I'll upload this to YouTube, send you the link, share it as you choose, listen to it as you choose.
Great.
And if you can, just do me a favor. Can you send me the links that you described, or your email at Colorado, and wherever platforms of social media that you would like people to outreach you on? So you can send that.
Sure.
I'll post that with this link, as well as I'll upload it to SoundCloud as well.
Okay.
All right, Juan.
Sounds good.
I love you, man.
Love you too, man.
You don't do this, but I did, and I don't care, man. Tell me what to say hello. Kiss the kids. Hopefully they remember me. If not, just
they will. They absolutely.
Tell them Uncle Crazy Rod. Love them, and to our students, man, upper bound students, and whatnot, man. Reach out to them and tell them I said that I'm so freaking proud of them, man. So proud of them. You can tell them Daddy Rod teared up a bit hearing about their graduations from college and high school and enrolled in universities.
Will do.
All right.
Yep. Absolutely. Hey, you too, Roderick. Okay. It was good talking to you, man.
All right, you too.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Absolutely. My pleasure. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.